Hello again and welcome to Bank of Ireland Annual Review. For the bank, it's been a year of steady, assured progress, one that sees the bank heading firmly in the right direction. There have been a number of developments, most notably the new push into the home mortgage market in Britain with the acquisition of Bank of Ireland Home Mortgages, and here in Ireland the introduction of a whole new range of competitive products and the expansion of the range of services through the forthcoming launch of its new life assurance company, Bank of Ireland Life. Finding a way to be more price competitive has once again been a major priority for the bank this year. In March, the plan to improve competitiveness was introduced, and this sees the bank developing a cost structure which will enable it to compete on price as well as on service. So all the indications are that the bank has got the right strategy, the pieces are coming together, and the strategy has begun to yield positive results. To look at the impact of this strategy on the bank, Bibi Baskin travelled nationwide to meet and talk with staff at every level.
I went round the country to get staff reaction. I met and talked to staff at every level about their concerns and their recommendations for the bank's future.
No, they're trying to get 600 redundancies in the year.
I think over the last 18 months we've introduced a range of products which are second to none.
They say, oh, well, train them in your branch, but you can't train them. You have 14 jobs, you have 14 bodies.
We are still the #1 domestic bank.
I think promotional opportunities for women in the Bank of Ireland are very limited.
Just some of the comments and queries from staff nationwide. And later on in the programme, we'll be getting some answers as we put these and other comments to group managing directors and to other executives. But first, the annual results.
Overall, the bank improved its performance despite the depressed state of the Irish economy. The retention tax, introduced in 1986, and the strength of the Irish currency against sterling seriously hit resources, driving many deposits abroad. In the home market, demand for lending was again slack. Despite this, net operating income for the entire group was up, rising from £349 million in 1986 to £371 million this year, and that's a 6% overall increase. This improvement was due to two factors. Loan loss provisions were down from £57 million to £46 million this year. That £11 million reduction is part of a continuing reduction in bad debts of 44% over the past 2 years. This fall reflects the bank's stricter controls on lending, although the figure is still too high. Non-interest income rose to £82 million, up on last year's £73 million. That's an 11% increase overall. This increased revenue came from a good performance in investment management fees and better returns from money transmission activities. Operating costs increased from £270 million in 1986 to £291 million in 1987. That's up 8% on last year. I'm afraid that the trend for costs rising at a faster rate than income continued again this year, so overall growth was again constrained. One of the most significant changes this year was the substantial increase in tax-based lending. Tax-based lending consists of leasing and Section 84 lending. Leasing works like this. Many companies have unused tax allowances simply because they're not liable for tax. So instead of buying plant and machinery themselves, which would only increase their unused capital tax allowance, the bank buys the equipment on their behalf, leasing it back to them at a much reduced rate, the bank then claiming the tax relief. The interest on Section 84 loans is free of corporation tax, but it attracts a special duty. And because of this, the rate charged on Section 84 loans is lower than normal rates. Since the bank's interest rates determine the profit level before tax, these reduced rates depress pre-tax profits. However, after-tax profits increase as they are adjusted to take account of the reduced tax on these transactions. So, this year, increased tax-based lending meant that pre-tax profits were only marginally up from £81.3 million to £81.5 million, but after-tax profits rose 16% from £44 million to £51 million. Let's now turn to individual divisions within the group. For internal comparison purposes, we're using the figures for after-tax profits. The associated companies, which included ICS, produced an after-tax profit of £2.6 million, marginally up on last year's £2.4 million. The reorganised British Credit Trust showed a significant improvement, doubling its profit from £2 million to £4 million in the year. BIF pushed up its profit by nearly £2 million to over £5 million, with IBI marginally up on last year to £8 million. Finally, the bank itself turned in an after-tax profit of £31 million. That's up from £29 million last year. In summary, the overall profit performance of the group was good, with earnings per share rising by 15.4% for the year. These improved results were due to the continued reduction in loan loss provisions, higher non-interest income, and an improved contribution from the subsidiaries. So, there are the results. We'll be talking to Mark Healy-Hutchinson, your Chief Executive, in some detail later on. But first, a brief comment on this year's performance.
Well, first of all, the year was a year of a lot of individual achievements, individual people, individual units within the bank and the rest of the group. Secondly, it was a year of an enormous amount of change, both internally and in the markets we serve.
Did you manage to cope with all that change?
Yes, we did, both internally and indeed the changes in the market, which were less expected. But third, and probably because of the market, it was a year which showed up some new problems, and the problem particularly of the differential trend between our revenues and our costs.
If those two curves should meet, you've got a big problem.
That's the problem. But having said that, the year overall, with 16% growth at on the bottom line, I believe was a year of tremendous achievement in very difficult circumstances.
For the moment, Mark Healy-Hutchinson, thank you. Now to what the staff think of the results. In a year that saw the group beginning to adjust to a rapidly changing market, what were the issues that most concerned staff throughout the group?
A number of areas of concern emerged again and again as I spoke to staff around the country. Among them, escalating staff costs and the need to be more competitive.
Every other business, the bank is concerned about escalating staff costs, and something has to be done about it. Now, the bank have developed a package, the Bank of Ireland specifically have developed a package involving voluntary parting and other facets, and this is with the IBOA at the moment, and they're discussing it. So I think this will have the effect of trimming down the staff to more acceptable levels.
As far as I know, they're trying to get 600 redundancies in the year. It seems a bit peculiar seeing as the AIB have proposed to take on 400 staff this year. I'd like to know why is there a vast difference between the Bank of Ireland and the AIB?
They have cut down the staff they're taking in the last couple of years so that the people that are here are secure in their jobs.
Job security is important, but also seen as being important is promotion, the lack of feedback from management to unsuccessful applicants, and the apparent limited promotional opportunities.
And I've been in branch banking 4 years now, and I have found that people that I've been on a level with in head office have got promotion. The openings have been there, but there are so few vacancies in branches and so many applications that the positions just aren't there.
I think promotional opportunities for women in the Bank of Ireland are very limited. You just have to look at the figures to prove that, you know. You see the figures for SBOs, there are so many women SBOs and so few men. And you look at the management figures then, and there are so many men and so few women.
There's a distinct lack of promotional opportunities in the bank at present. Even trying to get on yourself, you know, for job satisfaction. I mean, there are people now doing the same job, have been doing since they probably joined the bank, you know.
Some of the issues raised by staff which are relevant to Pat Malloy, the Managing Director responsible for branch banking in the Republic and in Northern Ireland, and also the man responsible for the personnel function throughout the organisation. Pat, the redundancy programme, if we can call it that, how far advanced is it and what are you looking for?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's quite right to call it a programme of redundancy. The plan to improve competitiveness does involve a series of initiatives to reduce staff costs, which we have to do in order to make us more competitive. But the programme consists of a number of elements. Part of it, and the part that will reduce staff costs, is the introduction of a new grade of staff, which will bring lower cost with it. The other parts of the package are a response to some concerns among staff about providing more attractive terms for people who feel locked into the organisation and might wish to avail of more attractive terms to leave the organisation.
But people are saying there that AIB are actually taking hundreds of people on, and you're ultimately hoping to get rid of hundreds of people.
Well, the figure that I heard quoted by the chief executive of AIB was that they would recruit 260 people in AIB in the year ahead. We will in fact recruit 240 people, so there are no differences really between us. And again, the plan is not about reducing staff numbers, it's about getting a lower structure of staff costs.
What's the philosophy on replacement of staff, though? Are you trying to make sure that you don't replace everybody who goes, that long term you've got to have a leaner, fitter organisation?
To some relatively small extent, we will run the system on smaller numbers, but essentially we will replace people who go. We're not about reducing in the short term our total number of staff. What we're concerned about is reducing the cost of our total complement of staff.
You mentioned that people are locked into the organisation. We've heard the complaints of people who figure there are no promotional opportunities, certainly out in the branches. There may be here in head office.
Yeah, I think that's always been a concern, and it's probably an even greater concern now when we have so many good young people in our organisation who want to get ahead. It's not because, though, that there aren't opportunities, promotional opportunities. And since we introduced the managerial new system of applications for managerial vacancies, we've advertised in the last 3.5 years about 250 managerial vacancies and about 130 or 40 assistant manager vacancies in about the last year and a half. So there's quite a number of opportunities. And the other thing I'd just like to say about that is that the total number of managerial posts in our system is increasing. The total number of assistant manager posts is increasing. They've increased in the last 7 years, since 1980, managers have increased by about 25%. Assistant managers have increased by about 30%. And indeed, even if you look at these posts as a percentage of total staff, they've increased in that sense also.
The application form, people spend a lot of time filling it in, and then what do they get at the end of it? A telephone call maybe, no feedback. That's not satisfactory. People are complaining.
Yeah, I think there is an issue there. The system, mind you, does intend that there should be feedback, and most especially for people who have failed on the second occasion or perhaps on the third occasion. The system does provide that their AGM should be available to talk to them about why it is that they have not succeeded or what the implications for them are.
Is that breaking down?
I don't think it's breaking down. I think it may be that people are not availing of it to the extent that they should, and I think they ought to avail of that.
According to some of those we talked to, women certainly get the short end of the stick, that when it comes to promotion, they're not rated really.
I don't think that that would by any means be a fair statement of our attitude. We are very anxious and very concerned to see more females advancing and being promoted. It is a fact that there's a very small proportion of females who are managers, 2%. I would like to see more applicants coming from the female ranks for managerial posts. And again, if you look back at the period of time since we introduced advertising for managerial posts, you'll find that only 6% of applicants were females. A higher proportion, about 21% or 22% of applicants for assistant managers were females. We'd like to see more females applying, and I think we've got a lot to do as a bank to encourage them, to give them the confidence and to develop them so that they believe they have a realistic prospect of challenging for these jobs.
Stay with us, Pat Malloy. We'll be dealing with more issues in a moment. The bank is certainly doing something right. The annual results demonstrate that. But what about the quality of service?
When I started first, the idea was to get your desk cleaned up and, you're the best official in the office. But in the last 3 to 4 years, they have realised the need for selling at the counter, spend more time with the customer. Because basically the customer doesn't care how many problems you have on your desk. It's how you deal with them, whether they're just looking for a checkbook or they need a half an hour with the manager. And I certainly think this is for the bank's good.
I think that the bank are offering a great range of services to the customers. We range from everyone from choice up to golden years. And I feel that the customers are being well looked after. They're well advertised. The customers are aware of them. And they're availing of the facilities and bringing in new assets to the bank.
I think over the last 18 months we've introduced a range of products which are second to none, and I think we can now hold our head up in the marketplace and that we have a range of products that we can be proud of.
If you were to have a selling attitude to lending, obviously credit department are going to have to change dramatically, we think, as one example. Rather than say the whole time, yes, we will give this application, or no, as happens more frequently, we will not give this application unless these conditions are met. They should adopt a positive selling attitude to this particular customer, what we would give this customer.
The importance of the bank's new selling initiative was widely recognised, but some staff were apprehensive as to whether they have the skills and training necessary to sell effectively.
You get some experience in selling from going to the counter and actually dealing with people, but it's very hard to know how to present the product to the people, particularly when you find you have to refer to manuals and refer to circulars, and if you're faced with the customer is asking you certain questions, I think it's off-putting for the customer as well as for yourself to have to go to a big booklet and start routing through it.
Selling techniques is the most important thing now, and with the competition in other banks and building societies, it's really important to know how to actually sell your products properly. So I think rather than leave it to our basic instincts, I'd like to see a more intensive training course on selling techniques.
Well, we did lately have a service quality course which every staff member will do, and it was great because we didn't think before that customers came in, you did what they wanted you to do. You didn't listen to them. Now you find that you listen to them and you hear what they're saying and not what you thought they were saying as we did in the past.
I feel that the bank should put more emphasis on staff training. They say, oh, well, train them in your branch, but you can't train them. You have 14 jobs, you have 14 bodies, and it's no use training them for 10 minutes here and 10 minutes there. And in that, I think the bank should do a bit more.
Selling is the key to increasing business, Pat, but they say they don't have the training nor the time to do it.
I think there's a lot of concern of that kind in the system, undoubtedly. Selling is very much what we're all about, and if we can't sell, we're not going to have much of a future. We're doing a lot, I think, to address both of those concerns. We're putting a lot of resources in this year ahead into sales training, and that'll be at two levels: training in selling skills, and then training for managers particularly in managing selling units. That is happening already. We've piloted it very successfully in some regions.
Are you going to try to take everybody out of their branch, bring them to Dublin, immerse them totally, and then send them back as whiz kids?
I think that there will always have to be a mixture of the two. I know it's very difficult to train in branches, but on-the-job training will always be part and parcel of how we train. But we are going to put much more resources into training outside branches. Mind you, it won't be all in Dublin. We've tended over the last while, and I think we're very happy that we're going in the right direction in localising training at area level or at regional level. But we are putting more resources in. During this year, we'll train 800 more staff than we trained last year in various courses outside branches.
If you could eliminate another kind of a problem, you might sort out some of your time demands on your staff, and we'll go back to Bibi to hear about that.
Paper, paper everywhere. The volume of paperwork still to be done seems to be bogging the system down. At every hand's turn, there's a form to be filled in or a document to be processed.
The rate of paper coming out of the likes of head office is extraordinary, to say the least. We are responsible for a lot of it in our particular area, but we find it absolutely necessary.
AIB have two such forms, and here they are: the application for a personal loan, either within the branch discretion or above the branch discretion, and the farming advance either below the branch discretion or above the branch discretion. Now we have, in this case, two up to the branch discretion. One over the branch discretion means a separate one going to the credit department, and more in the case of farming or agricultural loans.
There's still a lot of paperwork. There's a paper clutter, I think it was referred to back last year, and BBD were supposed to do a survey on this with the end result in mind that paper certainly would be cut to a minimum between head office and the branches. There's certainly no indication on the paper that is coming down to this branch from head office that that has happened, and from speaking to other staff in other branches, it's clearly the case that paper is still the order of the day, I think.
We've got to get out away from the paper mountain and start looking for business. This is the only way to counteract the AIB.
So, Pat Malloy, what about the paper-free office? It hasn't arrived, obviously.
I doubt that it ever will arrive in total, but we have a lot to do to take paper out of our system. Mind you, I think we've done quite a number of interesting things in the course of the last few months. The particular thing we have done, I suppose, above all, is that we've set up what we call the Clutter Project, and that's a small group headed up by Dick Murphy, who's manager in Ballsbridge, and I think they've done a tremendous job in a short period of time.
The ongoing introduction of new technology should minimise paper clutter. This same technology is changing the face of modern banking. Already, branches have experienced some of its benefits.
What is the normal branch going to look like in, say, 5 years' time? Are we all going to be doing selling and nobody doing lending or money movement? Or are there going to be branches just like we have at the moment where we do all the different services to the general public?
It's the one concern I would have about technology, not really knowing what is out there, what 10 years from now will be my position.
This brand new branch here in Castletroy in County Limerick has the most up-to-date technology in the country. This new environment changes the very face of banking. No security grills, no high counters. Instead, an open plan office. The automated machines provide the customer with instant statements, instant cash, instant information which previously used up the staff's valuable time. For the staff, a lot of the tiresome, mundane routine work is eliminated. And for the customer, service is swift and efficient and has the added plus of not being limited to regular banking hours.
We find the new technology excellent because basically it cuts out on a lot of the mundaneness and the everyday-to-day questions that you're asked at the counter that take up a lot of time. So therefore now we can sit down with our customers, tell them pull up a seat, come on, have a chat. We have the time to deal with you and there's no queue building up behind you because we have our customers trained into using the technology and they now see the benefits of it and they are delighted with it. And you could say that we're using the one-stop banking. That's the terminology. It means basically if the customer sits down here with me, well, I'll do everything for them and I won't have to say, sorry, no, go here for your cash or go over there for your standing orders.
It gives them a lot more freedom from the routine tasks and they can go up and approach the customers more than they could in a busy branch, you know, inside in town or wherever.
Machines can't do all of the work. You know, if you're dealing with people, you have to have bank officials to deal with them. Okay, the automation helps the situation, but I can't see it taking away jobs, you know.
Anybody who looks at Pembroke or at Castletroy, which are probably at the leading edge now of any technological developments in banking that you'll find in Europe, they'll find that what we have there is not at all threatening. We've got some devices which can process routine personal customer transactions in a quite efficient way and which will free up staff to do the things that I believe staff would prefer to do, and that is to relate with customers about their financial needs and to sell them services which we can offer to satisfy those needs. We're carefully monitoring the reaction of customers in each of those two outlets, but I don't see that that can pose threats or should cause concerns among staff in terms of its application. First of all, it's not the kind of technology that you could apply everywhere or that you could invest in everywhere. It really has application in those places where we have heavy personal traffic in particular.
Now, that is the future, and it's still some way down the road, but the immediate future and the present, I suppose, are of more concern. What sort of priorities have you got for the coming year?
Well, we've come through a very difficult year, first of all. A difficult year in terms of the resourcing problems we have had, credit management problems and so forth. And I think we've coped very well in the branch banking system with these. For the year ahead, it's going to be, to some extent, more of the same, in that our concern has to be, above anything, to cope with the resourcing competitiveness that we're confronted with. And that means attracting deposits, attracting credit balances, and hopefully doing it at the least possible cost. We've got to also grow our lending base, and we've got to do that in a way that is consistent with good credit management standards. We've got to grow our non-funds-based income, and this year could be a year of particular opportunity as far as foreign exchange income is concerned, and I think we should be pressing ahead on that. But I'd come back once again to the necessity, the absolute necessity, to control our costs. When we looked at last year, and when we look at our budget for the year ahead, we see that our costs are growing faster than our income, despite our best efforts. So that really brings us right back to the plan to improve competitiveness. I don't have to tell branch staff how important it is for us to be competitive on the resourcing side, to pay rates that match our competitors. And the only way we can do that is if we organise our costs so that we can afford to pay higher rates. That's what the plan is all about. It's about reducing costs so that we can pay higher rates, and in the process we can secure the future of our business and the careers and the prospects of all of our staff who work in this organisation.
Pat Malloy, thank you very much for joining us. Well, there are some of the questions which are of relevance to the branch network. There are some broader preoccupations among staff, and we're going back now to Bibi Baskin.
In every town and city, there's a competitor close by. More often than not, it's AIB. Comparisons are inevitably drawn.
We don't want to be on the old hobby horse all the time about the AIB, but it's amazing the way they always seem to come out on top.
I firmly believe that in the Republic of Ireland, we are still the #1 domestic bank.
AIB has a Maryland branch which produced about £15 million in profits. If you take that off the overall profit figure for AIB, you'll find that the Bank of Ireland and AIB almost coincide profit-wise. So really what you're seeing is the AIB, we're lucky to get a bank in America, and that is the reason that they're outstripping Bank of Ireland.
And we're a cautious and conservative bank, and I think that this caution has now cost us money. As you know, AIB bought into First Maryland, and it's now going to be much more expensive for us to buy into America. This is costing us money at the present time, I would say.
It was a decision AIB made at a time. It came right for them. They also bought the Insurance Corporation of Ireland, and it was a bloody disaster. You know.
AIB have got a high profile at over the last couple of years, but I think Bank of Ireland can meet them and match them and beat them.
I'm joined once again by the Chief Executive, Mark Healy Hutchinson. There still seems to be this perennial preoccupation with AIB being on top. What can you say to staff about that?
Well, Pat, you know I'm not greatly hung up about AIB, and I think we have to do our own thing. Now, we've spent quite a lot of time in the last few years working out our strategy. Not theirs, but our strategy.
They say you're cautious and conservative, though.
Okay, but we know what we're going to do. We've spent some time working out strategy. We're no longer working out strategy, we're implementing it. And we have some very clear pieces of strategy which may be just worth mentioning. You know, first of all, we've said, and I think all the people in Ireland know, that we are seeking to be a very broadly based financial services company in Ireland. And we've put all of the things in place to achieve that. Overseas, we're seeking to grow our business much more rapidly than the growth we can expect here, by acquisition and by growing what we have in a selective way. And all of those are combining together, or will combine together, to give us the growth in return on equity which we're looking for. Now, that's a very clear strategy, and one we are implementing now.
But they say it's going to cost you far more money now to buy an American bank, for example, than it cost AIB, and that's going to have its own penalties.
That could be, but I would like to make a point too about an overseas acquisition of any kind, whether it's expensive or not expensive, and that is this, that buying something overseas may be good for the shareholders, it may be good for the share rating. It does nothing for the security of jobs in Ireland. And what we are doing is a strategy on both sides, and what we're doing in Ireland is something which will secure the jobs in Ireland.
Now we're going to look at a problem which is an internal problem within this group.
All our life we have been indoctrinated that the car business and the home improvement business that traditionally we used to lend in was much more profitable when it was done through the subsidiary, namely ourselves. And now the bank have tended to do this type of business themselves. Obviously, we feel they wouldn't get the margins that we would have got.
I am a little concerned about the Bank of Ireland moving in on what is traditionally Bank of Ireland finance lending areas, in particular the home improvement aspect and the car loans. It's difficult to understand that aspect because from a group point of view, there is a greater return to Bank of Ireland finance than there would be to the Bank of Ireland.
That does sound like a legitimate complaint, poaching business from BIF, and yet we have to understand that bank managers have their own targets. What's the solution?
Well, the solution conceptually is the one that was described in the clip, namely that we should be looking at the group margin and not worrying whose books the particular lending or the particular deposits are put on.
That's in the theoretical world.
Yes, it is.
In the real world, a manager, if he sees he can do a deal with somebody, why not keep it to himself?
That's quite right. And indeed, the objective that we've set for ourselves is that the branch system should be selling products for all of the group. What we have not yet got right, and I would have to concede this, we haven't yet got the internal measurement systems which reward the branches for doing work on behalf of the subsidiaries and vice versa. And without those reward systems, I think it's unreasonable to expect people to do what may be in the group interest but is not in their personal interest.
Do you have a message for staff this year?
My message, I think, is that I believe we have really done very well in an extremely difficult year. That 16% growth was a real achievement in a difficult year, and for that I'm extremely grateful to all of the people who worked to make that happen, and I know a lot of people put a lot of extra effort in. I'm also terribly encouraged by the quality and the commitment of individuals all around the group in the way they work and the commitment they have to the group. And for that, I think we can, with that, I think we can look to the future with very considerable confidence, and confidence too that we can react to changes in the marketplace as rapidly as the opposition and make progress despite that marketplace.
So it's been a year of change and achievement for the bank, a year when the careful restructuring of the organisation began in earnest. 87-88 sees the bank poised to meet the challenge of an increasingly competitive market. But more than that, in 86-87, Bank of Ireland proved that they had the right strategy, one that works, is working, and will continue to work in 1988. From myself and Bibi Baskin, bye-bye.